Week 13's upon us, and here's 5 quarterbacks you should start this week in Week 13. The first guy is Philip Rivers of the Indianapolis Colts. Rivers here, he's having a good year now. The last few weeks is Rivers. He versus Houston. They give up the 16th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, and Rivers, he's been doing good. Like I said, he's had 20 or more fantasy points now in 3 in a row ball games. He's getting a good rapport with his receivers. It was even nice to see T.Y. Hilton have a nice ball game in this one. So Philip Rivers, he's available also, still in 70% of fantasy leagues pretty much. So Rivers here, he versus Houston. I think he could get things going early and often in this ball game and have another 20-plus fantasy game. And this is a guy, he's a good start this week. I would have confidence in him. And if you got a Tom Brady or someone on bye or injuries, Philip Rivers, he's a good start this week. The second guy I like this week at quarterback to start is Ryan Tannehill of the Tennessee Titans. Tannehill, he had a little bit of a funk in some bad games for 2 or 3 weeks, but now he's back on par. His team, they won 2 big ball games in a row now, and now they got the Cleveland Browns coming into Tennessee, and I could see Tannehill having a huge ball game versus the Browns here. I know the Browns, they've been playing well as late, but they're a phony 8-3 team in my opinion, and I don't think they have anyone. Even Denzel Ward, I don't think he's going to stop A.J. Brown. Corey Davis has been good, and Derrick Henry, he's doing everything now, and this is where Henry gets stronger, faster, and better as the season goes on, and it's just going to open up the passing game as well. So I like Tannehill to start, and I could see him get 25 to 30 fantasy points in this ball game. The third quarterback I'm looking to start this week is Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings. Cousins, this guy, he's been on a great run of late, and once again, he's got a pretty solid matchup this week versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, who give up the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. And Cousins, he's out there in 60% of leagues. He's been putting up big numbers. He's past 30 fantasy points now. The last 2 weeks is Cousins. And like I said, he's got 2 great receivers, Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. I'm going to see these guys have big games in my opinion. And Cousins, he's just going to make plays and win the ball game here for his team. And I could see him once again get over that 30-point plateau in your fantasy lineup. And he's a good guy to start. The 4th guy is Taysom Hill of the New Orleans Saints. Hill, another week, he's going to start here. And once again, he'll versus the Atlanta Falcons, which he had a good ball game against 2 weeks ago in Week 11, where he went for 233 passing yards, 10 rush attempts for 49 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns with a fumble loss. So that was a solid game, 25 fantasy points that day. Atlanta gives up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. And last week, Hill, he had a basic game, though. Only 78 yards with an intho, 10 rushes, 44 yards, and 2 rushing TDs. And that's the thing with Hill. His rushing yards, he's going to get you 4 or 5 points just on the yards alone. And it looks like he's going to rush in 1 or 2 touchdowns a game, too. He's a guy I didn't have on my top 15 rest of the season, but for this week I like the matchup, and I could see Hill once again getting over 20 to 25 fantasy points in this one, in a great matchup obviously versus the Falcons. And the 5th and final quarterback's Derek Carr and the Las Vegas Raiders. Carr, he's struggled now. Last week he had a bad ball game, well, .60 and a plus matchup versus Atlanta. But I'm going to give Carr one more shot here, and this is just matchup based. He's another guy that didn't crack my top 15 in quarterback rankings, so check for the rest of the season. So check that video out if you haven't. But Carr here, he's at the Jets. Everyone passes on the Jets and have huge fantasy days. And Carr, I think he's going to bounce back in this ball game after the embarrassment in Atlanta with 215 yards, 3 fumble losses, and an intho with 4 turnovers in that ball game. So Carr, he can't get any worse than that. He's got a plus matchup, and the Raiders need to win the ball game bad. So I think Carr bounces back and has a good game versus the Jets. So that's 5 quarterbacks I'm looking to start heading into Week 13.